Joining us today is Bethany Howell. Welcome to our studio. You are the Associate Director of the Colorado Water Center at Colorado State University.
Yes, correct.
Go Rams. I was a grad from CSU at one time.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still a grad, but
Always, once a Ram, always a Ram.
once a Ram, always a Ram.
There you go.
But to be honest, I did not know about the Colorado Water Center at CSU. So if you could kind of give us a rundown about that and your role within that.
That's all right. So we are a small but mighty team. And we've been around for a really long time. So the Colorado Water Center is one of the national water institutes that was created by some federal legislation way back in the 60s. And so they tend to be housed at land-grant universities. And so Colorado State's mission aligns really well with the Colorado Water Center, which is to work within the water community, particularly in agriculture, but also with water education, water engagement, and then workforce development. And so having college students right there and being able to work with researchers and professors on campus has been really great partnerships for us to grow. And we just celebrated our 60th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And so, going strong.
Happy birthday, I guess.
Thank you.
So I'd like to say we were just interested in the Colorado Water Center, but unfortunately we're in the middle of a drought. And so tell us, what defines a drought? And how does that differ from just some dry weather we're having?
So I will give a disclaimer probably more than once that I am not a climatologist. And so we have some really fabulous climatologists and scientists who work at Colorado State University and in other universities and places around the state who have amazing data. So I'm just going to give a plug for the Colorado Climate Center really quickly on that. But yes, the role of the Water Center is to help kind of demystify and talk through some of these things like drought that are really starting to impact people's daily lives other than those who are in the water community. And we're always kind of aware of drought. But now we're having community members who are really starting to think about it and wondering how it impacts them. And so, yes, unfortunately, drought has been a reality in Colorado and in the West for a really long time. And so it's not just a dry spell. We have a lot of science and data to back up that we've been in a prolonged dry spell, prolonged drought for at least 20 years. And so we do have, ups and downs. We have years that are wetter than others where we get more snowpack or more rain, but it doesn't really make a dent in water supply. And so that's really what defines a drought, is that impact to water supply and water supply planning over a long period of time. So when you have a very long period of time with high temperatures, and in Colorado we're seeing a lot more high temperatures over long periods of time. And then aridity, which is just the dryness. So if you go outside, you can tell that we don't have a lot of humidity in Colorado. And so we just are living within kind of an arid desert environment, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, the no humidity part is actually the appeal for a lot of people. But,
I was going to say, I've never noticed it was dry until I go to a humid place.
Right, yeah. New Orleans last week, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you did talk about the community. It's kind of affecting people more on a micro scale. Usually we think of droughts affecting farmers and livestock and those who depend on water for their livelihoods other than, drinking water, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could kind of tell us what those effects are, and, now it's trickling down to our communities.
And you're right. We normally think about it with agriculture in particular because they are the front lines of water and they're the ones who do depend on it for their livelihood, as you said. There's others within Colorado who also depend on it for their livelihood. So people who live and work within recreational communities, mountain communities, are also really aware of water and its ups and downs. And so it does have a widespread impact when we think about Colorado as an agricultural state in particular. Ag is one of our top economic drivers in this state. And so when we have lack of water and lack of ability for farmers and ranchers to be able to do what they do, it does have a pretty immediate impact. I don't know if you like to go to farmers markets or support, at your local grocery store, the Colorado Proud program.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we as Coloradans really, hold important. That's one of our top values. And so But we're cushioned a little bit when we're in cities or towns where we're not necessarily really tied into agriculture, especially on the Front Range. That can be a little difficult to think about and to see. And so other than, the fact that we are okay with drinking water, I just want to say that off the bat, like we're not going to be running out of day zero type situation anytime soon. It does have lingering impacts, and in agriculture, people who involved in agriculture see it first, but the economic impact. So number one, if you can't do your livelihood, if you can't run raft trips because there's not enough water in the river, if you're an angling or guide service and there's not enough water to keep fish temperatures, low enough to keep fish healthy, that impacts your bottom line. Yeah. Obviously, farmers and ranchers, if they're not able to raise crops or they're having to take their herds down in size because they're not able to provide forage for them to pasture. They can't grow enough hay. We have a lot of farmers and ranchers that grow hay and sell it to other areas as well. So we have a really thriving export. And so that does impact economics, but also it impacts mental and physical health, which is another really serious impact that we're not really used to talking about too much, especially in the agricultural community, but we're seeing it more in ag and also in municipal areas where people are feeling the stress. It's kind of a low-grade stress if you're not seeing it every day. It ratchets up the more you're involved with water until it becomes a daily stressor that you're thinking about. And that can take a really hard toll on people's bodies physically if you're under a lot of stress, but then also just mentally and emotionally, that's really hard to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of you wouldn't have expected that maybe, that, mental health would be, but it clearly is. Like, I know everyone I talk to right now is wondering about how the summer's going to go with the drought and how we're going to get through it.
Yeah. And I will say that there has been some really great work done in that space within Extension. There's a program called Agribility. The Colorado Farm Bureau also has an AgWell program. We have a program through the Colorado Department of Agriculture that works to support rural and agricultural communities. But as I mentioned, it's also starting to trickle into other areas. You might have been seeing some news articles where they talked about mountain communities that were really feeling the lack of snowpack this season. And that has a big impact, not only on the people who work directly with the ski industry, but then those towns and other people whose livelihoods are also tied to those industries. And so it does have a trickle-down effect of just increasing stress factors.
For sure. And obviously that's a big impact when it comes to the economics and, as we talked about, mental health and things. What are some of the biggest dangers that drought poses to our communities? I think wildfire is the first thing that we think of. What else aren't we thinking about?
Yes. Wildfire, grass fires, things like that are definitely top of mind. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have a huge moisture content in our air. And so when you have less humidity in the air, that also ratchets up the danger factor for spreading wildfire and forest fires, things like that. So that's definitely something to be conscious of. I saw as I was driving up here a sign that was reminding people to watch their chains. And so I think we're realizing in Colorado that fire season isn't a season anymore. And I think the Marshall Fire in particular kind of taught us in municipal areas that it can happen at any time, at any place, to any community. And so that's a danger. We're also seeing a lot of different climate dips and highs and lows with precipitation. So we're seeing areas where we have a lot of precipitation at once, which can be very dangerous if you're looking at mudslides. In particular, we saw that with the after effects of the Grizzly Creek fire. It seems to follow that we have a lot of rainfall that happens when we have a burn event. And so that can cause mudslides. It can cause problems with water quality because as you have that sediment that's moving down hillsides and it's going to our creeks and our streams and then eventually to where we do need to treat it for drinking water. And so that was a concern that we saw. So that's a danger. And then we're also just seeing, negative impacts across the board within the environment, which again, in Colorado, we care a lot about our wildlife and we care about the environment around us. Trees are suffering from drought just as much as we are, and they're just not as vocal about it. So it's a little bit of a cascading effect, and everything is really intertwined, and you see that more with drought. It's not as overt of a crisis, but it is still a crisis to some extent.
Yeah, thanks.
We recently had a bit of moisture, and because of that, we're out of the woods now, right?
I mean, yay for moisture. We'll take what we can get. But unfortunately, no. When we have a rain event or a snow event, I don't know if you have seen recent maps of the drought monitor, which you can see if you go to the USGS website. Colorado is in complete drought, like the entire state. And we got a snow event that was predominantly in the northern part of the state. And earlier snowstorms kind of hit the southwest part of the state and missed the northern part of the state. And so precipitation has been hit or miss, and it just depends on what area of the state you're living in. And rain is very similar in that effect. Like, not everybody gets to see the benefit of it. And unfortunately, because we were already dealing with really dry soils and a very low snowpack, any snowstorm, while welcome, wasn't really going to make that much of a difference. We really needed a lot more snow at the beginning of the season and all through the spring to really make an appreciable impact on irrigation season in particular.
It's a bummer, though.
Yeah,
I know. It's a little sad.
We feel like,
on the
we see the rain
side.
and we think we're in the clear. But
I mean, it's wonderful
case.
for the soil moisture, for one thing. And so, yeah, it is a little bit of rejoicing where you can and finding hope where you can, that at that time, rain is definitely something to celebrate, but we can't always predict where it's going to come. And even if you are really excited about a rainstorm that comes your way, I know that you've probably experienced what I have when you get really excited and it rains for 20 seconds and then it stops and moves on. And so that's
Colorado
kind of
way.
That's the kind of nature of Colorado is we either get too much or we don't get enough.
Jefferson County itself doesn't manage any water utilities, but many municipalities within Jeffco do. And they have put water restrictions in place. So what conditions determine when water restrictions need to go into place for some areas?
Yes. So that's a great question because everybody answers it in a different way, depending on the municipality and depending on where you are in Colorado. Water utility managers in particular are keeping a really close eye on storage, their storage capabilities, because they're looking at sustainability, not just for this year, but for the years to come. And so they're thinking about the demand, and they're watching those graphs of how much do people demand in the summertime versus how much do they need versus how much do we need to keep in storage. And so those are all questions that they're trying to answer that are very individual to different municipalities. So generally, they take a staged approach. And so depending on what area you're living in and the water utility that is kind of governing the area that you live in, they're going to look at all of those factors, and they're going to make decisions based on their community's needs and what they feel like can meet those needs. And so they try not to do, a very quick, like, we're just going to shut off everybody's water and not allow you to use it for any purpose, because that's not great for anyone. It's not great for the water utilities. It's not great for the community members. That kind of contributes to that mental health side of, if you don't have water to use at all, it doesn't create a feeling of, okay, we've got this, we're okay. Yes, this is a hard situation, but we have a plan. And so that's why the staged approach tends to work really well. And so they put that into place. And depending on how the summer goes, how the rainy season goes, what our storage looks like, what the demand looks like, they may dial that up, they may dial that back. And so there's always a little bit of calibration depending on the community.
I would say most of us know sort of the basics in terms of strategy and with conserving water, not showering as long.
Well, you should shower. I'll just put a plug in.
Yes,
Showering
you
is still
should
okay.
shower.
Maybe not so long.
Maybe not as long as you do. So taking shorter showers would be a better way to put that.
There you go.
And, not leaving the water on when you brush your teeth, adjusting your laundry settings, that kind of stuff. What are some of the most effective strategies for water conservation in homes and businesses?
Yes. Short answer is lawn irrigation is the number one user of municipal water. And so really thinking about your water usage outside, even more so than inside. We've gotten really good at having low flow toilets, turning off the water when we're brushing our teeth. It's very difficult to put yourself in a mentality of not having a beautiful, bright green lawn. And I'm just as guilty of it as anyone, as far as it does something to you to see, dry, parched grass versus, a verdant, moist lawn. But the reality is we do live, as I mentioned, in a desert environment, and the West needs to reconsider kind of how we think about our outside water use. We're not on the eastern part of the United States where they're seeing 40 to 44 inches of rain a year. We're lucky if we get, 10 to 15 in some areas. And so I'm really thinking about what you're using your lawn for. And if you need to have, 2 acres of manicured lawn, or can you scale that back a little bit? I'm not saying that everybody should go into, rocks and xeriscaping to the extreme, because there've been a lot of studies done that show that people's, mental health, again, is tied to having green spaces. And that's something that cities and businesses can manage as well, is thinking about where do we want to have functional turf and where do we have non-functional turf. So you'll hear that term a lot. And there are a lot of programs that people can enroll in or get support through with turf replacement. Depending on the municipality, again, there's lots of different areas where you can get funding support or incentives for looking at your lawn and taking parts of it out of non-functional lawn and putting it into something else. We have some beautiful and amazing plants in Colorado that are native species that look beautiful in lawns. And so thinking about, where do I want to change my outdoor water use, and where can I make that priority and goal for my own individual home and for my own individual business? And then cities are looking at the same thing with parks and recreational areas, is where should we put water? Where can we cut back on water?
Yeah, I'm going to need a note for my HOA to say, I'm going to rip out all this grass and put in some turf, because they're the ones I'm worried about are going to, your grass isn't green enough. And so we're going to write you a ticket.
That's a question that I've heard a lot. And I am also a member of an HOA. And so that's something that we're thinking about too. But there are programs, again, for HOAs in particular, grant funding and other things for them to be able to look at their non-functional turf. And when I say non-functional, that ask questions. That's the thing that people can do very easily, is ask questions of their city and their HOA of, why do we have this grass here? Because sometimes that grass is used in a way that maybe we don't realize until we have a flooding event. And that grass is helping to spread out the water so that it's not creating difficulty with infrastructure down the line. And so really asking those questions of your HOA and of yourself is the first step. I think reserving judgment and being kind to each other during this drought season is another thing to consider with neighbors. It can be really easy to start pointing fingers and saying you're not using water very well, and I'm over here trying to use my water really well. But having kind conversations about, how do we want our neighborhood to look? And do we want it to look like it's not taken care of? No, we all want to have really nice spaces, but how can we do it better?
Really good point. Thank you. So talking about that, should communities be planning for a future with more frequent or more severe droughts? And how do we do that?
Yes, they should be planning. And I doubt that there is a city or town in Colorado that hasn't thought or talked about a drought plan for their water supply. For homeowners, I think this season in particular is a little bit eye-opening. We're hearing the word unprecedented quite a bit, but it's really not unprecedented in a lot of ways from people who've been in Colorado for a really long time. And there are people that you can talk with who were around in the 70s when there was also a really hard drought. 2002 is another year that people mention as being really difficult. I didn't get to Colorado until 2013, but now it's been within my lifetime that I've lived here that we're experiencing this. So it is becoming a more frequent presence. And so, yes, planning and preparation is a big part of that. And again, it's looking at your own priorities as a homeowner of, how do I want to prepare for drought and then potentially wildfire? I know Jefferson County has a beautiful distinction of living really close to the mountains and to being in that wildland urban interface, which is great and scary at the same time, because you're having to think about fire mitigation in the midst of drought. That's another use that we use water for, is fire mitigation. So thinking about, how do we have enough for all of these uses? We're really going to have to start prioritizing and thinking through our own water use as it pertains to all of the different water uses that it's needed for.
You use the word unprecedented. A lot of people are calling it unprecedented. Is what we're seeing today a natural weather cycle, or is it linked to potentially climate change?
I'm going to say again that I am not a climatologist, but I will say that there is a lot of really good data that's been done and a lot of studies and much more learned people than I who have written incredible articles. We have Brad Udall, who's on our staff at Colorado Water Center, who's a climatologist and has spoken really knowledgeably about this. It is not a one-off, is all I can say for certainty, is that we are seeing a pattern of increased temperatures and a pattern of drier air temperatures. Those are going to have impacts. They're already having impacts. I don't know if you guys are around during March, but we had the hottest March on record. It has been warm in October. It has been warm in other months that might typically not be considered warm weather months. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that more and more and more. So it's not unprecedented in that if we are reading the writing on the wall and really thinking through what that means, it makes a lot of sense that as temperatures increase, we're going to be seeing water issues. And so I would really encourage people who are interested in knowing more about that to go online to the Colorado Climate Center, to the Colorado Water Conservation Board's website. It has a lot of resources as well that talks about the impacts of a warming climate and a warming weather pattern on communities, on agriculture, on municipalities, on industrial use, on the environment. So there's a lot of really good information out there if people really want to dive deep.
To me, I'm just like, there's so much that we need to do, so much that, I got to fix my yard and I got to do this with the water and I got to educate myself. But what is the most important takeaway for our listeners to understand about drought and our water future? What do you want them to remember from this episode?
I have been asked this before, and it makes me feel better because I feel the same way. There's definitely times I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm very sad about the state of where we are. What I love about Colorado and what I love about our communities is that we are very resilient and we have a lot of creativity and we are very determined to collaborate in the water community in particular. And I think that is the same across Colorado communities, is that we are a resilient population and we have lived through hard times before. We're going to see hard times again, and we're going through a hard time right now. But that doesn't mean that we just give up and that we don't try anymore. And so that's the encouragement I try to give to myself and to my neighbors and to my friends and to my own children, because I think that's a thing that we're also thinking as parents is what kind of world are we leaving for our kids? And so I think showing that model of kindness and resilience and how do we get through this? We're going to get through it by talking to each other. We're going to be creative. We're going to be realistic about the situation we're in, and then we're going to keep moving forward.
You offered a lot of different strategies to conserve water during the drought. Can you give me your best elevator pitch to Jeffco residents on what they can do right now?
Right now, again, I would look at your lawn water use. If you have a lawn, if you don't, thinking about your in-home use, you can work with municipal providers as well to do kind of like a water audit. Pay close attention to the gallons that you're using per month, and thinking about ways that you can really think through conserving water in really just easy ways. One thing that I have started doing is when you're waiting for your water to heat up. So if I'm making pasta, let's say, and I'm waiting for the water to heat up, instead of just letting the water run down the drain, capture it in another container. Use that container to water your plants or to water your dog or your cats or to put in your bathtub to get your bath started. I mean, just little things like that aren't necessarily cutting back your entire life, but just thinking smarter about how we're using water and really considering each time you use water, what is a way that I could use this water smarter, which is something that we do in Colorado in agriculture a lot. And then in municipal areas as well, is like, let's use that water smart and not just be wasteful.
I know. I do think about that a lot.
I think about it every time.
Trying to capture my water, like draining pasta. It's like,
I've thought about the rain capture what do you call that?
Like a rain barrel?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rain barrels are another great opportunity. You can use those. You're allowed to have one rain barrel per household. And you can hopefully, when we do get a rain event in Colorado, if it gives you a couple of inches, you can save that, use it to water your garden. Again, using it for your lawn. So if you do have areas that you've identified that you want to have a vegetable garden or roses, use that water over there. Let's not live in a sad environment. Let's think about how we can still make our world very fun to live in.
Right. Now, in my apartment, I don't think a rain barrel will actually help, but the garden in the box might help on my patio. So,
There you go.
Yeah. That's Resource Central, right? That we can.
Yes. So there are a huge amount of resources available online. If you Google your own county, I'm sure Jefferson County also has really great resources within your county websites to learn more. County extension agents are another great place for people to ask questions. There's a great team here at Jefferson County that can talk with people about their in-home use and offer programs to help get them started and point them towards resources.
And you can listen to that episode with them from a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
From the Engage Jeffco podcast.
Well, thanks, Bethany, so much for joining us and talking about this important topic that we're all kind of dealing with right now. And I just feel like, oh, now what do I do? Moving forward. But hopefully, Bethany has given some good tips and maybe a little bit of comfort too, that yes, we have this issue, but there are ways that we can do it without totally sacrificing the life that we know and the green spaces that we love.
We all want to live in a Colorado that feels enjoyable. And I do want to give people that push that we're not saying don't use water ever again. Please take showers. Please brush your teeth. But if you have if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Colorado Water Center. And we're always happy to have those conversations. We're happy to point you towards others. Like I said, I'm not a climatologist and I don't work in that space of turf removal, but I can point you towards people who do, who that is their passion. Farmers and ranchers are the front line feeling the effects of drought. And so if you see them, maybe give them a little extra thumbs up or like, we're thinking about you. We're doing our best to support what they're doing. They're already really struggling this season and it's really hard for all of us. So again, the mental health resources are out there. I really encourage people to check out any of those resources. You don't have to be an ag producer to access them or to gain some understanding about what it is that you're feeling. And I think that's really important for us to recognize is that drought impacts everybody in different ways. And so what can we do about it? How can we support each other?
Yeah. And once they hit the shelves, buy those Palisade peaches and Pueblo chilies. That'll support the farmers.
Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're going to have to pull my arm to get some Palisade peaches. Come on. I would travel multiple states to get a Palisade peach.
Well, you
So
don't
once
have
you've
to.
had one, you can't
No.
get back. Go to your farmers markets, support farmers that way. There's a great website on Colorado Proud's website that talks about different farmers markets across the state of Colorado. There's some really great ones here on the Front Range and support them. Go buy, just spend a little bit more and really support local.
Bethany, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. Spending the time coming all the way down here from Fort Collins. Is no small trek. So.
Well, it's a great excuse to have a little time to myself and think through water. And this is something that I care a lot about. And I'm really encouraged that you care a lot about it. And hopefully people listening will consider their own relationship to water and to Colorado and the places that we love and want to keep going.
And maybe on the drive back, you can pick up a Engage Jeffco podcast.
That sounds like a perfect
There we
idea.
go. Or
Probably a couple.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm intrigued. I must listen to the one with the extension agent.
There we go.
Thanks so much for joining us again.